Before we get started on today's topic, we just want to ask you all if you could support us on Utreon, Subscribestar. YouTube memberships now are available on both Night's Watch and Shadiversity, as well as Patreon. Ad revenue has come to the point now where we can no longer rely on it as a business, and so your support is needed now more than ever. And as another option for those maybe who want to get something in return, we also do have new merch designs with more on the way. So if you want something physical, you can also head over to Teespring and buy some stuff. However, being a monthly supporter with whatever platform you choose from can actually help us forecast where we are looking for in the future, which can then help us plan and prepare for better and greater content for you all. So that's enough talking and preambling. Let's head straight into the video.
Welcome back to The Watch. And Nathan, the Super Mario Brothers film. Is it woke or is it anti-woke? Is it a pushback against the woke agenda or is it dripping with wokeness? Now, you loved the film.
I did.
You did?
It was great. I enjoyed it. It was wonderful fan service for me.
Yeah.
It was better than the original.
I didn't like it, okay? But the reasons for most of the reasons I didn't like it, you can see this in our review, is that I didn't feel the payoffs were nearly as good as it could be. I'm not a fan of the world personally, and the writing was a bit flat, and then there were certain elements in it of clear kind of woke ideology, intersectional ideology. When I say that, changes from the original character that seem to only have been made primarily to appease kind of the more modern audiences, but it wasn't that big. Yet I see it so often that it annoys me more and more. And I find changes like this insufferable, which is why I went so far to say, like, the girl boss trope is insufferable and Peach is an insufferable girl boss. But I was also very clear that it's actually not that big, okay? And it's not overt or in your face. But that was kind of my take on it. And I could see that it mostly wasn't that bad. But then I also said I think kids would love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the general review, I think, yeah.
Well, what's interesting is the general kind of discussion around the Mario Brothers film, that some people are saying it's actually completely anti-woke, and the other people saying it's completely, well, very, very woke, not completely woke. I haven't seen anyone say it's completely woke, and what's interesting, when the people try and straw man and say that, the right are going crazy, where they're attacking Mario for being crazy woke, they actually try and use us and Tim Pool. But what I find hilarious, they try and use us that we're saying it's overflowing with wokeness, when if you watch our review, it's very clear that we say it's not overflowing. That's actually in isolation, probably wouldn't, even be on our radar.
Yeah.
But people, they love to lie and they love to straw man and stuff. Now, Tim Pool had a take on it where he was saying it was very woke, okay? But he said it's like out of 10, it's on the woke scale of I can't remember, it was like between, it was 4, 5 or 6, something like that, but it was on that range.
I mean, I just feel like that's just media in general. Usually that's like we'd find that average now. It
depends, because I've always pushed back against the notion that anything that might be interpreted or could be interpreted as woke, right? You need to see if that was the intention behind it or if it was just for the sake of the story. Because you can't suddenly say that suddenly every strong female character or female action hero is always woke. It's like, no. Sometimes you just want a strong female character, and you can tell or find out the intentions behind why they make certain things. One, is it an improvement to the story, or if it's doing nothing, or if they just, the creators have said so.
So would you say woke movies don't necessarily need to have, like, what makes a movie woke? Is it the agenda behind the creators, or is it the content inside the movie?
It can be a bit of both, actually, because someone might unintentionally, this is where Death of the Author might come in, have a theme or message that could be extremely in line with intersectional philosophy and stuff like that, and people get on board and love it, and they're like, well, I didn't mean that, but if it's so overt and clear, it's right there. And it's interesting because some people are trying to say certain messages in The Last Jedi, right, where, it's really uplifting, Rey is doing this, she's finding herself and stuff like that, when you actually look at what the film is saying about Rey, about what Holdo does in terms of punishing, is it Finn, that pilot guy? It's been a while since I've seen the film.
Same. I'm trying to erase that movie from my brain. So,
but there are clear certain kind of really overt things that wow, you almost can't get any other interpretation from it. But then there are other ones where you can see why they've made certain changes or even have certain things that could be perceived as being in line with intersectional ideology, the woke movement, the push for representation above all else, political correctness going crazy and stuff. Might seem like that, but when you look at it, it was changed perfectly in line with the story. And a great recent point of reference is actually in House of the Dragon. So they changed a character in House of the Dragon, race changed. Okay, I think it was Corlys Valerian, and he was a white character in the book, and they changed him black in the show. And that's a red flag. This is one of the interesting things that a lot of people try and criticize. People like us who are reviewers and everything like that, where the push for wokeness to co-opt media to push an agenda and stuff like that is so prevalent that there are clear red flags that you can see a mile away. And for the most part, but not universally, for the most part, those red flags seem to be pretty accurate indicators, don't they?
They have been in the past. Like if you were to have a table of things that warned us, more often than not, it's like 95, 80%
yes,
success rate.
Exactly. One of the interesting things was Rings of Power, where we knew from a mile away that this was going to be an agenda-driven woke dumpster fire from everything that, the creators were saying, the changes that they were making, the reasons behind the changes and stuff. And people were saying, how can you say this because it's not even out yet? And we did a video. We actually have a dedicated video of certain red flag warning signs that can tip you off, indicate if something is going to go crazy woke. And that we were absolutely correct on it, but we're not always correct. I took a warning sign of Peach being in kind of that biker outfit. I'm not familiar with the Mario property, and so I'm not aware that she wore biker outfits a lot. And to me, that was a red flag because I was lacking the context. And I know Peach does appear on a bike in the trailer, but so small that I missed it completely. I didn't even see her on that motorbike. And she does wear dresses in the trailer elsewhere, but some of the key moments, like when she's getting ready for battle, she's suddenly wearing pants. And that would be a red flag based on all the other kind of indicators that we have. Now, Peach wasn't nearly as worse or as bad as a girl boss as I was fearing from the trailer, which is why we didn't criticize the fact that because it makes sense she's wearing that outfit, because it's very clear in the film that she's on a bike. Yeah. So that all makes complete sense now, doesn't it? Now, when House of the Dragons comes out, this change, that was a red flag, and they were promoting it as being woke. Like it's got all this intersectional philosophy behind it.
Showrunners were really pushing for that, weren't they?
But when it came out, it actually enhanced the story because there is a question of, let's say, who is the father in the story? And there is this thing where everyone around them are the people, the characters and everything within the story. Basically, there's like an open secret where everyone can see that someone isn't, the child of who they're saying they're the child of. And by changing the race of the character, that suddenly becomes extremely obvious that the open secret is almost laughable, and it enhanced the film overall, the show overall, because there's key moments, there's key lines when people say, like, just look at them, right?
Yeah.
And the visual difference is so distinct because of the race change, it makes that more impactful, and the desperate cope of the characters to try and hide this secret and everything, that it becomes really, really clear and enhances it overall. And as a result, even if they try and say they changed it for wokeness, it's like, but it enhanced the show. It's a good change, and it's not actually pushing your ideology or philosophy as a result. Like, if people watch that, they're not going to think of intersectional kind of, messaging that women need to belittle men or be unreasonably competent, and there's an imbalance of depictions of men versus women and stuff like that, because overall it's actually really well balanced. And so it's not promoting their ideology, even if they're claiming it does. It's actually not. You watch it objectively, and there's some really strong male characters in the show, with traditional fatherhood promoted and celebrated, and traditional virtuous masculinity as well, with also bad masculinity and bad female behavior, good female behavior, good balance overall, great show as a result. And so even if they try and say it was woke, it's actually not. So you judge it mostly on its merits, I think, when it comes out. And that's what we did with Super Mario. And so what's interesting is when you look at Super Mario specifically, there were changes to Peach. Okay? For instance, what is Peach's tone of voice more stereotypically in the Mario properties?
I think it's very high pitched.
Very high-pitched?
I always think of it as British because she's a princess. Where in this one, she's more deeper and American.
And take control and stuff like that. Where Peach, almost like for me, she was a celebration of girliness, and I found that really charming about the character. And even to the point where she does fight in Mario properties, she does it in a really girly way, where she might hit someone with a frying pan, pull out a parasol, or duck behind, Toad, or all these fun, really girly, cutesy kind of movesets, which I found really endearing and charming. Okay, that's not in the film.
No, it's not.
It's not.
I've thought. See, the thing I think is most difficult for me with this is because there's been so many iterations of Mario, and he's basically been through so many reboots. Like if you look at the original 64 Mario, Peach is very like, "Dear Mario, come to my castle," and at the end he gets a little kiss on the nose, and it's all very like they are shipped together as a couple. Where in the more recent games, it's very like not like that at all.
She's not into him, and he's a bit.
And Bowser's a simp. It's very apparent with that sort of stuff. So like over time, things have changed in the games, but I feel like that stuff hasn't been necessarily because of the woke movement, because it is Japan. It's more of Japanese trying to tip things on their head to be different and unique and change stuff. But then I think when they've brought this into more of a Western audience, that's where a lot of these ideologies have like come out more.
Yeah, now, I actually really respect that for the most part. A lot of Japanese brands and everything don't give a crap about what West, pushing everything. But we do see certain things where they do cave into the outspoken mob in the West and thing. Like they change certain characters in the Final Fantasy series to be, less problematic, to complaints that come out of the West and things. And so with the changes from Peach in the films, like, do you think that was because there's because I don't think it's actually to appeal to Western audiences overall, if they were to pay attention of what the majority of fans actually like, but there's a very vocal and aggressive movement who are very, I guess, insistent in pushing that, girls can't be too girly and they have to be very this and that and stuff. And because they get more prominent and they're more outspoken and vocal and everything, then, people outside of our culture might think there's this expectation to appeal to a Western audience that they need to appease these deranged, crybabies, right? So do you think the changes in Peach were in case of the potential, negative things, like they were doing it for what they perceived these parts of the Western audience?
I don't know, because Nintendo, they, like you said before, they don't give a crap about anything or anyone. Like they will dive nose into like red and then try to recover from that. But I think in terms of, I don't know, because like the same with Mario. Because
I do need to correct myself, sorry, because Nintendo didn't actually make it. They had a lot of control and involvement. But this is Funimation.
Illumination.
Sorry, Funimation is in Japanese.
Which would have been cool to see as well. I don't know, because I feel like the Nintendo, like I would hate to work not for them, but like kind of under them, because they're really
controlling,
really controlling. And so I feel like a lot of those choices, maybe there was parts of misunderstanding, Western stuff. They, Illumination was like, this works for a Western audience. And so, because that's the thing, I haven't seen what it's like in a different dub. Like if it's a Japanese dub, if Peach
has
like a different voice or.
So I've heard rumor, not confirmed, so take it with a grain of salt, right, that the Mario film was actually a lot more woke, and there was a lot more belittling of Mario and girl boss Peach and everything, and Nintendo stepped in and told them to tone it down. Have you heard that rumor?
I believe that.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it, but I believe it, because I remember I went on a double date back in the day to watch the Minions movie, and that was probably the trashiest movie I've ever seen. It is so dumb, and that's when I like woke up to like, wow, children's media can be so stupid, and so it doesn't. I would totally believe that Illumination would kind of do that to Mario and those characters, and I'm so grateful Nintendo was like, no, we need to respect this character who we love and adore. This is our mascot, for crying out loud. Like,
and so this would be one indication, if confirmed, and it sounds like it comes from people who are showing sources, and I could look into it. But even if not, the thing is though, is it certainly makes sense for mainstream media, like these large studios, everything, who love to appease the woke mob because they're extreme. So many of the people in Hollywood making stuff, this is their philosophy. They're intersectional, feminists and crazy extreme, woke.
I'm sure when you're surrounded by it and you're showing them a clip of it and they say, well, Mari isn't being, belittled there, you should probably add that in there. They're probably taking notes and it's just what they're surrounded by. So they're, adjusting to that.
Because there is certainly a very clear avoidance of allowing Mario to save Peach in the film. Moments in the film where it would be perfect for Mario to come in and save the day, and there's like, no, Peach is going to save herself. And it's like they even sneak in certain, because it's the wedding scene that I'm referring to, and even the final payoff of the film wasn't as satisfying to me because Mario wasn't able to do something clever on his own to achieve the victory. Wouldn't matter for kids, these criticisms, it's all fun for them. And I've said multiple times, I think my daughter would, just get on board with the Mary Sue girl power stuff because she's too young to really realize how much of a Mary Sue. Did you notice like everyone is loving Peach and she's always so capable and she's a Mary Sue character. That's not a well-written character as a result. It would have made sense if they showed some flaws and everything. And so to me, it's pretty clear that there are definitely changes to Peach that are pushing her more in line with what intersectional feminists would demand of a character, but not so completely to overpower the film or many other shows that we have seen where the woke agenda just ruins everything because that's their primary goal. We see it constantly, like Wheel of Time, Rings of Power, and all of them, so many, okay? And so it's in this interesting middle point where the woke elements seem to be clear enough for people to point out. I'll point them out. Tim Pool has pointed them out. But even Tim Pool said it's not crazy woke. Like on a woke scale, it's actually not to the brim. And I said it's mostly harmless. I said on Friday Night Tights, I said in our review, in isolation, wouldn't bother me. I just see it again and again. And then I also said in our review, I've been so clear about this, even if people want to try and lie and take it out of context and everything, is that kids will love it and it's not going to be, that bad. The interesting thing about that, because it's mostly harmless, okay, I can see why people would then say it's an anti-woke film because it's not woke enough. Mm. Now, not being woke enough, that is something that we have seen quite a lot, where you see these shows that are very woke, but then the activists basically are so down, the rabbit hole that it's still not woke enough, and they will latch onto any flaw or offense against intersectional ideology and stuff, that they will then criticize it mercilessly for one kind of thing. Yeah. Because it's not woke enough.
It's never perfect to them. There's always something wrong.
Well, do you know why it's never perfect? It's because they want a virtue signal, okay? And so it makes them look better by being able to call out this isn't good enough. And so they'll look for anything on the entire list. It doesn't matter how much it panders to them. If they can find any flaw in it, that's an opportunity to, you're doing wrong, you need to be better, blah, 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 I'm such a good person, look at me, blah, blah, and all that. Because there are some really insanely like woke shows that are made to be fully, agenda driven to appease that crowd. And one thing, I remember when Ruby Rose was cast for Batwoman, she was bi and not gay. You should have a gay person in it, all that stuff. House of the Dragon, to me, it doesn't pander to any side, but if you want to say, look, does it has your representation? It does. It's got, a representative cast and everything, but they were criticizing it because a gay character supposedly gets killed. Oh, actually, sorry, there are multiple gay characters and one does legitimately get killed. And that was homophobic because a gay character died, okay, which is like...
we all die eventually.
You want gay characters to be typecast to only be, and it's the same with like black characters. Like you can't make black characters villains, or you can't, And there's this meme that shows every possible representation of or use of a black character in the media, and the woke response saying like, how can you have the black character be the villain and everything? And then, the black character is the hero and they're getting attacked by white people. Are you trying to, and so you can't please them. There's always an angle where they can try and say it's, not representative and stuff. But we see heaps of properties that even try and appease the activist and it's still not good enough. And those are shows that are really woke and still not good enough. Mario is mostly harmless. I've said it's mostly harmless, and I've been one of the ones who've been pointing out the clear woke elements in it. And even I say it's mostly harmless. I took my family to it, And because that's I think it might be the key point is where I think people are seeing that or they can perceive it as an anti-woke film, is that it's harmless and, as a result, kids aren't going to be kind of manipulated into thinking certain things and stuff, because it is mostly like that.
The messaging is just having a good time.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. It's Mario and everything. It has those annoying things in it, but for kids, it's not going to matter. They won't be.
Even I think people who aren't involved in any of the culture war stuff, who aren't aware of these things, aren't going to necessarily pick out of like, oh, maybe there'll be parts where they think, why didn't Mario save Peach? Because that's what I'm used to playing in the game. But aside from that, I feel like there isn't anything overtly like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I completely agree. And like contrast that with something like She-Hulk, where I have family members who don't care about the cultural war and anything. And even they said like, why are there all, they see it. It's so overt that even people who are not into it just see what they're doing for
But
their
I
agenda.
also want to say there are still people out there who I know who say Rings of Power wasn't that bad. She-Hulk, it was okay. Like, we've got to understand when you aren't involved in the culture war, I think especially when you're doing other things in your life, these shows, you just switch your brain off completely, and even stuff like She-Hulk, you can laugh at and enjoy. So...
I mean, I'm almost thinking that's the exception, because they're getting so bad and so blatant that even normies are just like...
They just don't care enough.
So, Mario is not nearly as woke as what the activists would want, okay? Mario could absolutely have been belittled far, far more than what he was. Peach could have been a much bigger girl boss and everything. It seems like that was even the intention for Illumination to do, and Nintendo got them to tone it down. And so the agenda and intent was actually there. Some still got through, but not completely. And what's really interesting about that, Mario then is a great example of almost hitting the line of what people would want. Okay? Where if you want elements of your intersectional ideology and everything, well, there are there, but not so much that it's going to ruin it and everything. And there are elements of traditional values in Mario. I praise Mario for having an underdog story where he never gives up. And the male lead, he still does save the day. Not in a satisfying way, but he saves the day, okay? And so there are traditional elements that conservatives and people against the woke movement will appreciate and can find great value in it. You loved it. Jeremy Geeks and Gamers love it. There's a lot of people who love the Mario film, okay? And shock horror, when you do something like that, it's not checking out large audiences, and a larger group of people are then enjoying it. I think it would have been just as successful, probably perhaps even more, because there would have been a greater emotional payoff and stuff like that if you allowed Mario to save the princess, and just would have worked better narratively. Because then if there's a big emotional payoff, like if I loved this movie as much as I loved, say, How to Train Your Dragon, I'll be watching it again and again. I don't care to ever watch this movie again, because for me it was just so bland and blah and everything. And I don't think it's going to stick out in people's memory as something that gave them a really strong emotional kind of... Maybe not. I'm looking at you. Maybe not.
I mean, for those who aren't connected, yes. For those who are. Well, I also just think, like, thinking with the whole, like, agenda thing, I think Nintendo's agenda for this movie was just to make money. And so they were edging the line of how to keep both sides happy, how to be the most kind of grey centralists they could be, so everyone would go to their parks and play their games, and no one would, they wouldn't pick a side, basically.
Well, the crazy woke movement, I honestly think a lot of the changes, they thought they were changing because it would make money. They thought like, hey, we already have a large male audience. If we start appealing to the female audience, it'll just grow it, grow the, the property, and we'll make more money overall, not realizing that you're absolutely spitting in the face of the original fans, taking away what they liked and repackaging it for an audience that actually have really no interest. I'm talking about comic books mainly here. No massive interest in superhero concepts like stories and stuff. We love the girls that are into the guys that, we love the girls that are into the stuff that guys stereotypically like. I mean, it's always been, we've wanted them to be involved in it, but we also want the stuff that we've always loved. We want superheroes to be like the classic superhero stories and all of that. And changing it, okay, of course is going to make the main fan base check out. And yeah, so I do think like they thought appeasing to the woke activists would, they thought it was the majority opinion because they're so outspoken on Twitter and there's such a vocal minority effect where they think it's the majority. now they're starting to learn. I think they're starting to pay attention, like, oh, this crap doesn't make money, and we've just been... And for some, almost, I'm not sure if they will ever come back from it. Like, Disney has done such scummy things at this point.
You have to clear house, I think, for something like that, or really, you have to basically break the business and start from the ground up again to recover from stuff like that. Because especially in terms of Disney, I think it is so ingrained in the DNA now, you cannot make anything without incorporating that stuff.
Yeah. So it actually does make sense to use Mario, the Mario film, as an example of how something can be really successful when it doesn't get fully corrupted by the woke ideology and activists and stuff, because it's not fully corrupted by that.
No.
It had potential, and there was things I didn't like, but not so much that caused me and many people who would have checked out from it if they went full-blown woke with it. But they didn't do that. And it's so therefore, good example, Mario, I'm delighted it's doing well. And I hope it just takes Disney's lunch, and I want it to be crazy big. And I definitely want more, when I say more movies like Mario, in terms of embracing the property and being true to the fans, that's what I want more of, okay? I would like better storytelling. I want more movies like How to Train Your Dragon over Mario. And I hear Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is just incredibly good. I haven't seen it yet, but those are the types of films that really, say that's what we want more of. And especially so with Mario, we don't want movies that are appeasing the woke movement wholesale, which Mario certainly isn't doing, and as a result has the capacity to be hugely successful. So that's why it's a great point of praise, and also egg on the woke movement space to say, you think being woke is going to be really... Look at Mario. It's not crazy woke. It's got those things, but it's not crazy woke, and it's really successful because that means most people are able to enjoy it. So it can actually be an example of both.
Because it's a middle ground, I think.
It is, isn't it? You can absolutely point out the woke elements in it. I've done it. Tim Ball has done it. But you can also use it as an example of something that has a far higher chance of being successful because it's not fully corrupted for the, agenda.
See, to go for more of a tangent, I'm very curious to see how, because I know they want to make a Zelda movie with the same thing. And that, I think, has a lot more heroism and saving the princess, I think, even stronger than Mario. Like, Peach, I think, is more of a playable character. It's only been very recently where Zelda's been something that's a girl boss. And so when that comes out, I think this is going to be brought up again.
I don't know. See, with Zelda, right, unlike Peach, where Peach was overtly girly in a really tongue-in-cheek, cute way, and so it makes sense for Zelda to be more, I depicted as a girl boss like Peach was, where she's a competent leader of a kingdom, and so I wouldn't be against that. It seems to be more in line. But in terms of fighting the bad guys, you're right, that seems to be a very more recent thing.
Yeah, and I think as well, like with the Mario movie, it was very like Mario and Luigi. Like they were saving each other, looking out for each other, where in Legend of Zelda, it is Link and Zelda. Like he has to save her.
Doesn't she have one of the things of power? She has a lot of magical power, but she's not swinging swords around.
Yeah. So again, I feel like we'll revisit this conversation when that comes out, because then we can see, because it's also, again, it's the same studios making it, the same companies giving the rights to it, and then we'll probably see, okay, we'll have more perspective on the Mario movie with how the next movies, I think, come out.
Well, like, Mario's been a big success, and if they do just at least stay true to being true to the fans, I hope it does tremendously well. Disney deserves to be taken, because they're not learning anyway. They're doubling down and tripling down on their agenda. And so, oh boy, I'm so delighted to see Disney just get what they deserve, and to see another far more family-friendly, company take its place. Let's do it. Love to see it. That's awesome. So let us know what you think. Mario, woke versus anti-woke. Again, I think it's a bit of both. Thank you for watching. We appreciate you. And always, stay on watch.